G'day Internet, welcome back to another video. The Macintosh IIci, a computer that I kind of owe an apology to. Some time ago, I did a video on a IIci. If I remember correctly, I recapped it, got it all up and running, and it was meant to be part one. The video, I think, was even titled part one, and there was never a part two. The plan at the time was to then collect up a bunch of upgrades for it, and that was going to be the second video. That kind of just never happened, and that particular IIci then got sold off or something to make way for probably something else. But fast forward to today, and I have another one. This has had no work done to it whatsoever. But I do have a collection of upgrades sitting to the side, waiting to go into this machine. But if you know anything about this era of Mac, step one is that the main board needs recapping. It's not a question of if, it really is a question of when. So step one is going to be to tear this thing down, get the main board out of it, and recap it. Now, if memory serves me right, these actually aren't too difficult to pull apart. Cover off. What do we got inside? We seem to have, I think this is the network card. All right, next I think we go for the hard drive caddy. And I believe we start by removing the hard drive. So, SCSI cable out, power cable out. And I believe it's just these two clips. Is it going to put up a fight though? Well, that's one side out. Got it. Right, hard drive out with LED. There's a screw right down there. Now, does the caddy come out or the power supply first? This is the question. Straight into the power supply. So the power supply's got to come out first. Just a little bit of leverage, it's all I need. Right, I think it was just a little stiff. Now this slides back. You come out after disconnecting the floppy cable. Ooh, still got a battery in it. We'll get rid of that in a minute. I believe next out is the speaker. How do you come out? Like that, unplug, out with the reset button. And if memory serves me right, this whole thing just slides back. Got it. It's caught on the power LED. Step one, be gone, battery. Hadn't started to leak, thank God. If we take a closer look at the board, let's just say some of the capacitors are getting a little fluffy, is probably a good way of putting it. But I'm not seeing like guts spewed everywhere, so that's a good thing. So I'm going to tear into the recapping of this thing, and we'll see if I make it worse or not. I didn't record the entire recapping process. Partly because I'm sure you've all seen someone recap a mainboard by now. Secondly, I'm not actually all that good at it. I kind of fudge my way through, and I know what the YouTube comment section would be like. And if you want to see someone who's really good at recapping, especially Mac mainboards, check out Bruce from Brachus Creations. Okay, recap done. Mainboard back in the case just with the power supply, purely for testing. I've got it hooked up via a VGA adapter, primarily so your eyes don't bleed from flickering on a CRT, because I'm not sure what refresh rate this is going to boot up into. So let's see how we go. We have chime. We have power light. The monitor thinks there's something going on. Hey! We have mouse. That's all a good sign. It seems I didn't kill it. And of course we get the question mark floppy because there's nothing plugged in. So next up I think is hard drive. But before we do, I did manage to pick up a new PRAM battery. So let's stick that in. So interestingly enough, JCar actually still stock these batteries. And I'm doing it now because the battery lives underneath the hard drive and floppy drive cage. So let's pop this out. And new battery. Nice. So to get the cradle back in, the power supply needs to come back out again. It's quite stiff. There it is. Cradle, floppy drive still in it. This just drops in. Plug the floppy drive in before I can't get to it anymore. Double check that I plugged that in right. I did. And this should just drop back in and go, no, come on. There we go, snap. And there's a screw that drops straight down there. And now the power supply can go back in, hopefully for the last time. Cool. Now we need something to boot off the hard drive. Here's the original one. It's a 160 meg genuine Apple half-height SCSI drive made by IBM. If I vaguely remember correctly, this drive actually works, but we can do better these days. So I'm going to replace it with this blue SCSI. Now this is the blue SCSI version 1, primarily because I've had it kicking around for ages. And far as I can tell, any performance benefit from the version 2 you're never going to see on this machine anyway. So this is going to go in. And side note, the other thing I like about the version 1 is that it's kind of a bit more DIY friendly, less SMD. So yes, 3D little printed bracket. It's mostly tightened in there. And that can simply just drop into here and plug our SCSI cable in. Doesn't need power. And the only other thing to add is the activity light. The original one literally crumbled in my hand. Well, the wiring did. So that just pops into the front. And the wires for the original one aren't long enough either. And that can just plug into the header on the blue SCSI. Right. Now, to see if the hard drive image I created actually works. Okay, blue SCSI in. I didn't put an SD card in it. Now, speaking of SD card, I wanted it accessible, which means having it come out the back. I couldn't find anything pre-existing, so I had to design one. So it's essentially a replacement back panel. And the little holdery bit I actually stole from Colin, as in this does not compute. I'll put a link up here, which is one that he designed for, I think, an LC. But this should just be a case of feeding this through, locking this in and praying I don't break all the tabs. And I guess we can just kind of route it through here and plug it in. And my SD card's now accessible from the back. Right. Now that it's actually on an SD card, let's see if it boots. We have activity. Come on. Hey, there we go. And this brings up a good point. So on this SD card is OS 7.5, which is a good operating system, but it is shall we say, a lot more memory hungry than, say, 701 or 7.1. And if we go have a look at About This Mac, you can see that I'm using basically 3 meg of the 4 meg that's on the machine just to load the operating system. I think the next upgrade for this is some memory. And what I have here is 8 4 meg sticks that should give us a grand total of 32 meg. Now that's by no means the total capacity of the 2CI, but I think it's more than enough. So let's get RAM swapping. And speaking of RAM, I did manage to get my hands on the #1 part that held up my previous attempt at working on and upgrading a 2CI, and that is the cache card. I finally managed to get my hands on one. And this just goes into its little slot just there. Righto, go again. Nice, and it's all booted up. And if we take a look at About This Mac again, we seem to be using 27 meg of the 32. I suspect I know what that might be though. And yes, it has turned off 32-bit addressing. Let's reboot and see what happens. And that's what I expect to see, about the 3 to 4 meg mark, not 27. Now, you notice I'm still running this in black and white. It's because I'm guessing macOS has gone, hey, that's a different video card. So in monitors, there's our 256 colors. Whoops. Colors. And it basically gives us a 640 by 480 resolution. Now, taking a look at this screen actually highlights the next thing I want to change. The onboard video uses system RAM. So I have a way around that, and that is this. This is a Radius Precision Color 8XJ. This is by no means the greatest new bus video card you could put into a 2CI. However, they're not all that common, at least on eBay here in Australia, and this is the only one that's come up in quite a while, so this is the one I nabbed. And we'll stick it straight into the machine. Now let's see how it goes. Right, we're back in. It's obviously decided to go back to black and white, but if we go to About This Mac, we've dropped some memory usage, which would be the memory usage of the onboard video. I think, I could be wrong there, but if we go back down to monitors, set it back to 256, if we have a look in options, the Radius stuff should be in there. It is. Now, I don't know if this is simply a limitation of the card or it's the way the VGA adapter is configured, because unfortunately I don't have instructions for the dip switches, and I seem to only have a choice of 1152 by 870 or 2 options for 640 by 480, and if I suspect, yeah, it doesn't like the 1100 resolution at all. And if I go back in, oh, it still thinks it's running at 1150, but it's, well, not. It could be that I've actually got the wrong drivers installed, but they're the only ones I could find. Cancel that. I just tried another radius driver, and look, I've got 800 by 600. And if I go, I don't know why it wants you to go Control Option. So I've got a whole bunch here. Oh, I can go up to 1068. Watch this go badly. Nope. Ooh, crispy. Very cool. I'm going to put it back down to 800 by 600. I'm glad I found that. So really the only other thing to go into this machine is this Dynaport network adapter. I believe it's a 10BASE-T device. However, I'm not going to set this up. Oh, actually, it's a Dynaport IIci, primarily because classic Mac OS networking to me is black magic, and not once have I ever got it to work. But it's going into this machine mainly so I don't lose it. So one little neat trick I just discovered is you can actually just go Control Option and click pretty much anywhere, and you get your little pop-up menu. Sweet! So the only thing really left to do on this machine is to give it a bit of a clean. It's a little grubby in spots. We've got some sticker residue here. We've got what seems to be an old auction sticker, so that can go. Of course, guarantee you I end up with a nice little white patch because of some subtle yellowing, although it doesn't look that yellow, but we'll see how it goes. So, cleaning montage. So with all this work done, I guess the real question now is, what do I do with it? Well, a bit like when I did the eMac, there's a whole bunch of my favourite games that were released on Mac. You've got to remember that I grew up with PCs, and I was always under the impression that Macs didn't game. Turns out I was wrong. So there's some truly great games that play really well. Let's take Monkey Island, for instance. Now, obviously, it doesn't have the high-class MIDI or Amiga soundtrack, but I think it does a good job. Until it crashes. It's really unhappy. So that's a bit sad. I'm not sure what's going on with Monkey Island. It ran fine in the emulator when I set up this hard drive, but it just refuses to run on this machine. I had the Radius card out, I disabled all the Radius stuff. Yeah, it just doesn't like it, and it just crashes at that same point every time. But not all is lost. Let's see how we go with Prince of Persia. All right. This seems a bit better. I will say, it does look good on this screen. Oops, that was the pause button. Whoops. That didn't work. This is one of those games where the weird arrow layout on this keyboard kind of isn't doing us any favours. Whoops. See? A classic golf game, PGA Tour Golf. All right. I do like a good golf game. Of course, I put it into the rough. That was too hard. Yes. Hey, a par's pretty good for me. Of course, you can't have an apple without playing Oregon Trail. And this is the very nice Mac version. Doesn't have any cool kind of background music though. Oh, sorry, Adrian, you have a fever. I love when you put it into grueling pace. The cattle is basically just running. Sorry, Clint, you died of typhoid. And there we go. It was bound to happen. Sorry, Neil. Now, obviously, one upshot of being able to run at the higher resolution is games like SimCity, which run in a couple of different windows. You've got plenty of real estate instead of them constantly overlapping each other. And yeah, this game runs fine. I'm in Dullsville. And crime is out of hand already. God, that didn't take long. Must be in America. Now, it's not all fun and games, and this one's funny. Right, so when I was in high school, the main computer labs eventually got, I think, they were Mac Classics or Mac Classics 2. And the old Mac Pluses got relegated to the library. And about the only game we were ever able to play on that was a game called Air Hockey. And I'm pretty sure it's actually Shuffle Puck. But there's a slight problem in that it runs ridiculously too fast. And even if I go and turn the opponent's speed all the way down, I don't remember it being this fast. Hey, I got one! No! All right, that's enough. Now, other than Monkey Island giving me some grief, everything is kind of all up and running, but there's one thing that's bugging me, and that's this. This just looks wrong. I mean, it looks great, but it looks wrong. I have one more thing. This is an Apple Australia Studio Works 54M. Now, when I looked this up, and considering the plethora of Apple information, especially Mac information online, nothing came up. The only link that came up was a link to an LG Studio Works 54M on one of those really dodgy manual sites, and it's this monitor. This is an LG Studio Works 54M that I can only assume was bought in by Apple Australia and rebadged as an Apple, because it does have an Apple label on the back. Now, this monitor will do 800 by 600, it'll even do 1024 by 768, but not at refresh rates that this camera will deal with. So again, instead of making your eyes bleed, 640 by 480, but it looks nice. And after many, many delays, the Apple IIc that I always wanted to put together. It's got a healthy amount of RAM. I finally got that cache card. We've got a modern hard drive that I can access from the back. an upgraded video card to take the load off the system RAM, a very nice monitor to pair with it. All in all, I'm really happy. And the 68030 in this machine it's enough to do most classic Mac things. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the ridiculous accelerators that, say, Sean from Action Retro manages to get his hands on. So no, I don't expect to see a PowerPC processor in this anytime soon. But for what it is, I think it's come together very nicely. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Did you have a 2CI back in the day? Maybe you used one at work. The impression that I get that these were quite the workhorse back in the day. So I'd like to see your comments down below. As always, a massive shout out to my patrons who are scrolling up the screen as I speak. And if you'd like to help support the channel, there is a link in the description. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.